Coming up on today's Locked On Senators, prepare to be motivated. We've got an interview with personal trainer Tony Greco.
He tells us all about working with Senators players like Claude Giroux and Tyler Kleven and how he got inspired in this career.
Plus, Elite Prospects has began their countdown of top 100 affiliated prospects, and Ridly Greig is the lone Senator so far. All of it is coming up on today's episode of the Locked On Senators podcast. Your team every day.
Your Locked On Senators, your daily podcast on the Ottawa Senators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
I'm Jake Sanderson, and you're listening to Locked On Senators podcast.
I'm Tim Stützle, and you're listening to the Locked On Senators podcast.
Welcome inside episode 859 of the Locked On Senators podcast. I'm Ross Levitan on the outskirts of enemy territory in Winnipeg, Manitoba. Alongside Brandon Piller up in the Blue Mountains, we want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by Bird Dogs. Go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNHL and enter promo code LockedOnNHL for a free white tech hat with any order. You don't want to take your bird dogs off, we promise. birddogs.com/LockedOnNHL. A reminder, you can also follow and subscribe to Locked On Senators wherever you get your podcasts. We're free and available on YouTube. The social media is at Sens Central on Twitter and at LockedOn.Senators on Instagram. Today is Tuesday, August 22nd in Pilsy. What better way to pick up a dog day of the summer than by getting some fitness goals and some hot takes about Claude Giroux season by his personal trainer, Tony Greco.
Yeah, it's awesome. We finally got a chance to chat with Tony. We've kind of had this in the works for a while, and the off season is when he's doing most of his work with the Sens players. So this is the perfect time to hear from him. And yeah, like you'll hear, I'm motivated to start making some changes myself, especially after seeing the confidence Tony instills in everyone he works with.
But before we get to that interview, I want to discuss Ridly Greig's ranking of 79th among all drafted prospects by EliteProspects. And there's still the top 50 to go. I have a feeling, knowing how EliteProspects has felt about the last Senators drafts, that this is the only player in their top 100. Of course, we could be wrong, but I have a very strong feeling that this will be it. Ridly Greig, 79th. When you see that and you look at the other players in that area, is that okay? Would you think he's higher? How did you feel about that?
Who were the other players in that area? I didn't see the article. I just saw the little snippet you posted there.
So EliteProspects on Rinkside, they do these, their top affiliated prospects. And actually, as we say this, the top 50 has been released. So while I'm pulling up, if there are any Senators prospects in the top, 50 to 26, they're really milking this out. EliteProspects, though, is a very good resource to be looking at for prospect information. Pilsy, why don't you read off what I have from the Ridly Greig excerpt, and I'll pull up where he ranks among his peers as we go through that.
So they go on to say that basically they start talking about how they weren't believers in Ridly Greig, but now they are. They love his playmaking. He moves well away from the puck to find pockets of space and get the puck back. He's fearless, constantly attacks high danger areas, and doesn't hesitate to throw his body at opponents and win the pucks back. But they still believe that he needs to get a little more size, a little more strength, which I think even Ridly would tell you that. I'm sure he's still drinking 4 protein shakes a day. Maybe he's got to talk to Tony. He's got to get on the Tony Greco workout and nutrition. Maybe that would help out Ridly Greig. But it's kind of funny, Ross, that they're kind of being like, oh, we were wrong about this guy. He's really good. And then rank him 79th out of 100.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of prospects, right? And
there certainly are.
The players who are in that area, Zach Dean, a first-round pick of the Vegas Golden Knights, traded for Ivan Barbashev to the St. Louis Blues at last deadline. Ivan Miroshnichenko, who we covered, another first-round pick of the Washington Capitals, was at 80. Then Ridly Greig, then William Wallinder, second-round pick of the Detroit Red Wings from 2020. And then just a few up at 75 is Rutger McGroarty, who was 14th overall in 2022. So this is a range where some first round picks are going. I would hazard, for me, Ridly Greig would be closer to 60, I guess, just base. And if we go down and see who's around 60, you have like the Jonathan Lekaramakis, Noah Ostlund, Daniil Boot, who ironically was the draft pick that Ottawa traded for Jacob Chikrin. I do think, and I don't think this is just an elite prospects thing. I think it's more of a prospect rankings thing, that there's a bit of recency bias. There's a bit of, the shiny new toy who just got drafted. So we always see that in these lists, that the 2023 draft picks will dominate the top half of this list. And maybe it's because this was known as a very good draft, but at the same time, I do think there is a little bit of that to be taken into consideration as well.
Yeah, and I mean, Ridly Greig he had such a weird prospect development path because of the COVID year. Obviously, didn't get to play much in the WHL that season. I'm looking at it. It was the 21 games that year. So that's definitely hindering to him. Then he got to spend 7 games at Belleville, but it was the 2021-22 season where he had 63 points in 39 games in the WHL. Like, he should have spent that year in Belleville, but with the CHL rules and agreement with the NHL, he wasn't able to do that. So I feel like he's kind of, I don't want to say had to catch up, because it's not like it's his fault he's fallen behind, but I just feel like he could be one step ahead of where he was if he was able to play in Belleville a year earlier.
Yeah, I think that's very fair. And when you're looking at Ridly Greig, like, I think the biggest question for Sens fans is, will he play center or wing long term? I think that it's pretty cut and dry that he's an NHL talent as soon as this year. Although, how would you feel if he started in Belleville? Do you think it's too much at this point, or do you think there could still be some lessons learned? Because to this point in his career, he's exclusively played center. They haven't tried him on the wing at all. Although, you look at if he's going to be a long-term fit in Ottawa and Shane Pinto can get re-signed, it seems like left wing's the spot.
Did they have him on the wing on the 4th line for a bit?
If so, it was very rare.
It wasn't long. Yeah, it wasn't.
He was centering Claude Giroux for most of the season, played a bit with the Brinket as well. Like, he's even in Belleville, right? He was with Igor and Roby. He was with Igor and Crookshank at different times last season. So I think, like, would you prefer he play bottom 6 wing or centerman top line in Belleville to start next season?
Well, I have him long-term as a winger. I think he can be more successful as a winger, at least until we see his size get up. Once his size gets up, I think he could be more effective as a center. But for now, I like him on the wing. I would be surprised if he ends up in Belleville, to be honest, at the start of the year, just because I think the Senators are going to have to take advantage of these entry-level contracts. And Ridly Greig is the top entry-level contract guy they have, really. Like, I think he can look great as a 3rd-line left winger playing with Pinto and Kubalik. I think that would make a really nice 3rd line. So that's where I'd have him personally.
Yeah, that's fair. And when we're looking at Ridly Greig and his ranking here at 79, before you say, elite prospects, they're always Sens haters, I will let everyone know that last year they had Jake Sanderson at number 4 on their list.
All the way down at 4?
I mean, you could argue that because the guys, they had Seaman Edvinsson right ahead of him. I think that's probably leaning in Sanderson's way, but I understand the physical aspect of being a 6'6" defenseman and maybe having a little more physical tools, but I wouldn't bet against Jake Sanderson. I got into a little argument with a Red Wings fan about Edvinsson and Jake Sanderson yesterday, and I pulled it up. Each of them had 12 penalty minutes last year. One of them was in 9 games and one was in 77.
Yeah, Jake Sanderson's discipline is off the charts, especially with the high responsibility he was given in the end of the season, big time.
Yeah, and they nailed it with number 1 last year. It was Matty Beniers. He stepped in and was just a number 1 center right away. They had Owen Power at 2, Edvinsson 3, Sanderson at 4. I think that will be a fun trio to watch over the years, all 3 in the Atlantic Division.
Yeah.
Habs fans, I hear you screaming. David Reinbacher, I hear you. My ears are bleeding. Lane Hudson, I get it. They ain't there yet. I believe Lane Hudson was ranked 30th among prospects, which actually surprised me based on how much we know elite prospects love him. I did too before the draft, and I have. But Ridly Greig, 79, it's only up to 25 right now, and there are no other Senators, so I think we can be assured that this is it for the Senators on that list. But they're in a situation now where it's about finding guys who can contribute in the bottom 6.
Yep.
Can Roby Yarventi, Igor Sokolov, Angus Crookshank, Stephen Halliday, maybe at the end of this year and then going into next year, Oscar Pettersson. Those are the players who Ottawa needs to get the next level out of. they're no longer looking to make their top 6 better or top 4 defensemen. It's who can be the most promising depth pieces and help out in a pinch in a bigger role when injuries happen, not if, because we know the way the NHL works. So let us know your thoughts. Ridly Greig, how are you looking for his development to go next season? What's a projection you'd like to see or a goal that you'd like Ridly Greig to attain? Let us know in the comments on YouTube. And if you missed yesterday, we had the Ring of Honor, our most hated Senators villains. You can go vote on that at Sens Central. Coming up, we have our Tony Greco interview. Lots of great insights. Stay tuned for that. You're listening to Locked On Senators.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Bird Dogs. If you guys are watching on YouTube, Ross is wearing the white tech Bird Dog hat. And this is something, Ross, both of us noticed right away. That is the most comfortable hat I've ever worn. Like, you put it on, it's stretchy. It's like a nylon material. It fits perfectly to your head.
It's like tennis. It's like a tennis hat.
Yeah, it's a tennis hat. That's a good way to describe it.
Look how flimsy it is.
The white looks so sharp. It's great for just heading out on taking the dog out or going for a quick stroll around town. And it's no surprise that they have the most comfortable hat there is, because all their clothes are so comfortable. The joggers feel like you're wearing like silk pajamas, but they look awesome. I love all their shorts. They got the funky inline colors as well. It's usually like a pink or a lime green or a bright blue or something like that. And the best thing about them is they keep you cool in the summer. They have an anti-stink sweat-wicking fabric that keeps you cool and dry all day long. So Ross and I absolutely love our Bird Dogs, and you guys are going to love them too, I'm sure. Go to birddogs.com/lockedon or enter promo code LOCKEDONNHL, and you can get yourself a free white tech hat with your order. That's birddogs.com/lockedonnhl or promo code LOCKEDONNHL for a free white tech hat. You won't want to take your Bird Dogs off. We promise you.
Today's episode is also brought to you by one of our favorite sponsors. It's Farm to Fork, farmtoforkdelivery.ca. Farm to Fork is a premium meat and seafood delivery service that services all of Ontario and most of Quebec. Just put your postal code in when you go to farmtoforkdelivery.ca, and you can taste the Farm to Fork difference. They'll let you know where they deliver to. And when they deliver, they're able to put it right into the right spot for you. Now, when you're looking at premium meat and seafood, one of the best parts about Farm to Fork, for me at least, is that they're individually vacuum sealed. No longer like before, when I used to get bulk chicken frozen, I would literally have to smash them on the table while they're frozen just to break them apart. And that is not how you treat your meat with respect. You want to be able to just pull out what you need. No hormones, no antibiotics. It is the antithesis of what you'll get at the grocery store. When you go to farmtoforkdelivery.ca, go check out all their great bundles. Barbecue season is in its This is like, I get the initial impression when you start barbecue season, but now that we're inching closer to September, October, when the leaves start changing, that's when you want to make the most out of barbecue season and extend it as much as you can. Get as much use out of your barbecue that you can. So go check out all their great ingredients at farmtoforkdelivery.ca. Because you're a listener of Locked On Senators, take 10% off. Use our promo code SENS10. SENS10 for 10% off your first purchase. Farmtoforkdelivery.ca. Taste the Farm to Fork difference. You will never, ever go back to grocery store meats. All right, now let's get to our interview with Senators Claude Giroux's trainer. It's Tony Greco. All right, we now welcome a very special guest. This personal trainer is well known in the Ottawa area for his decades of working with some of the area's most elite athletes, including Senators alternate captain Claude Giroux. He's the head of TG Athletics. Tony Greco, welcome to Locked On Senators. How are you doing today, man?
Doing great. Pleasure to be on the show, guys.
It's a long time coming, man. I remember when I was growing up in Ottawa, listening to the Tony Greco show on the Team 1200, TSN 1200. I want to rewind all the way back, though. Like, what initially got you passionate about fitness and working out and training?
Well, it all started back in 1995. I won a gold medal for Canada in kickboxing, and the experience was great, because I always say, like, fitness should be for everyone, not just for the elite. It's the feeling, and like they call it the runner's high. Well, it's the high of feeling good, and I thought everybody should definitely experience that.
Now, how did you go from being a gold medalist in kickboxing to training some of the top hockey athletes in the world? Like, where is there a lot of kind of similarities in the training that you're able to cross over and transition from sport to sport?
Yeah, you know what I really wanted to share is the progress, the mind stuff, because everybody kind of understands the physical part. There's a lot of great trainers around the city, and it was just the mind stuff, the experience, to share that progress with other people. And I remember I transitioned, because when I won a gold medal, I said I wanna teach fitness, and then I reached out to a guy by Ed McNeely, because I wanted to work with Olympic athletes, and worked with him for a bit. And now I'm presently working with a guy at the University of Minnesota. His name is Cal Dietz, and Dr. Ben Peterson, who's a fitness director for the San Francisco 49ers. Thanks to Claude Giroux that introduced me to these guys. But it was just the feeling of like, you know, wanting to win. Like, winning isn't everything, but wanting to win is. And I think the only way you can share these experiences is to go through it. So I wanted to do that, because a lot of the similarities were that, you know, the martial arts has a lot of disciplines, and I find that hockey players are probably one of the most disciplined athletes. You know, they're very good at what they do. They get it. And a lot of times if they don't, that's where like some of my strengths come in, on using the mind and making them believe that they can.
And a great follow on Instagram as well. Tony Greco TG. Love kind of the motivational aspect of it. If you were to break it down, training versus nutrition, what would you say the percentage is of importance? Is it close to 50-50, or is one more important than the other?
Well, I actually, you know what? People say it's 80-20. I actually think it's 90-20, 90% nutrition, 10% physical fitness, because you got the genetics part in there, right? Like, someone that's pretty big boned is never going to look like he's skinny boned, right? So yeah, you can lose all the weight you want if that's what your concern is, but the reality is it's not about weight. It's about having lean muscle mass on your whole skeletal system. So the nutrition to me is fuel, and I think that's always the most important thing, because you need fuel to drive a car. Well, you need fuel to do the exercises, right? So the fuel you put in is going to be the fuel that you put into your Ferrari or your temple, being your body.
I love it. Well, I won't tell you what I've been eating the last 7 days. I might get you to close off this interview pretty quickly, but just going through the testimonials on your website as well. Of course, you brought up the name Claude Giroux already. 15 years or more. How did you get introduced to him initially?
So his agent at the time brought in Paul Byrne, Simon Lacroix, and Claude Giroux. And it's funny because they brought him into my Manotick location. They're like, and at the time, I already had worked with guys like Dan Boyle, who thought at the time was going like, well, who's this martial artist that's going to teach me off-ice training? And then it's funny experience, because Richard Valente, who happens to own Fratelli's, introduced me to him. And the first day he comes in, you know, he thought it was going to be easy. And this guy was like, just like almost collapsed, right? And at the time, it was just, I mean, it was a tough workout. And then Chris Phillips, of course, was there, and Todd White. And this is going way, way back, and Mike Fisher, of course, which I'm naming these centers players because we're talking about people in Ottawa. So they said, you know what, Claude might have a chance. This guy Simon needs to work a little bit on his footwork. Then Paul Byrne says, this guy's a maybe. And then it's funny because I sat them all in my office and I started talking about nutrition. And you know how Claude likes his cheeseburgers or his grilled cheese. And he's like, is that healthy? And I'm like, well, what do you think? Right? So
if you have to ask, probably not.
It was such a funny thing, just dealing with these three guys and knowing what they've become today. And I was Paul and obviously Claude are in the NHL, but Simon, he's actually living in Montreal. I think he got married and he's doing really well. But 2 out of 3 made it. And it was just from then on that we just bonded really well. And it was amazing because I saw how hard they worked. And I saw the dedication. And then the funny thing, too, that they were speaking French. So they didn't think I understood it, right? Mm-hmm. So, you know, I did after a week, I was explaining to them, I said, by the way, I'm pretty good in French. And they're like, what the heck, right? They couldn't believe it. But we had some good laughs. So I think that was some great bonding for the week. And then now we've been longtime friends. And, you know, it's been great having them here in Ottawa, that's for sure.
Yeah, so that would have been back when they were playing in Gatineau together when you would have met them?
That's right. That's right. So I remember the coach says, whatever you're doing, this guy, keep doing. Because the next year, I think he had like 112 points. And it's like, just keep doing what you're doing, right? But it was just funny to, to see that. And you know what? The drive and dedication, guys like Dan McGillis at the time were pushing him. Again, Boyle was working out with him as well. And it was good. They saw Randy Robitaille, another Ottawa centers. So these are the guys who were in the barn at the time, Freddie Brathwaite, and just great bunch of people that really uplifted everybody's spirits, including his. Today, I remember Dan was giving him heck sometimes because he actually tries to rush through the workout all the time. And it's like, hey, slow down, do it right, do this. And this kid's like 16 years old, just doesn't really get it, right? He just understands he's got to go through a wall to get where he has to get, right? So it's crazy. I love the kid's attitude for sure.
Well, Pillsy, I'm sure has a few more, but I got to follow up on Freddie Brathwaite because we're a hashtag goalie friendly show. How does training alter from goalies to players? Do you work them any differently?
We just work a lot of different angles. I believe, goalies mentally have to be so much in the game at all times. People think, it doesn't seem like goalies work hard. Well, yeah, they do, because mentally they got to be in. Oh, yeah. And if they're not, obviously, you know how crucial that is. So we'll do a lot of lateral stuff for goalies, a lot of up and down stuff, just more mimicking a lot of the movement patterns to their position. But the strength, the endurance, the deep holding in their deep position is always crucial. Think of a goalie, how low they got to get, all the time, and getting ready to make that big save, especially during the power plays, right? So it's almost the same. It's just more or less, it's just a lot of linear stuff, a lot of hand-eye coordination, where, the players are more linear lateral, really quick up and down the ice because it's a dump and chase game now. So we just adjust little things, but the strength and power is all there because it's pretty much same movements. Just most of them are just lateral.
Hope you're enjoying our chat with Tony. We'll get right back to it. But first, a word from one of our favorite sponsors and somewhere I think Tony's visited quite a bit. It's Shawarma Palace.
Yeah, if you're looking for the right fuel for your body, like he's talking about, fresh, great ingredients, Shawarma Palace is the place to go, Ross. I'm just visualizing the chicken and the beef spinning on the spit right at Shawarma Palace and on the tray of all the fresh veggies. And they absolutely pack your shawarma sandwich full of all their beautifully fresh ingredients. And it's making me more and more excited for the home opener so that we have a chance to get some Shawarma Palace. 7
locations across Ottawa. They've been around since 1997. Expansions, Carleton University campus, Sailor Ross Shopping Center, and you can always find us on Rideau Street right by Augusta. My favorite, the flagship Shawarma Palace. You go to their Instagram, you see the garlic potatoes. So good. Signature chicken. Always busy, great locations. You like falafels? Get the falafel in your sandwich. Just know you're getting the most pristine ingredients, the freshest. And talk about portion size. We shrinkflation. That ain't happening at Shawarma Palace. They always make sure that you leave full and you leave feeling great because you've just had a Shawarma Palace. Whether it's a sandwich or platter, get the extra garlic and tell them that Locked On Senators sent you. So go visit Shawarma Palace. Eat like a royal. Eat at Shawarma Palace today. All right, now back to our interview with Tony Greco.
How often are you working with these guys? I assume with Claude, it's mostly during the off season. Do you have kind of a scheduled routine that you're seeing him, or how does that work?
Yeah, so what we do is I train 3 different tempos to generate maximum force of power. I work with a guy at the University of Minnesota. His name is Kyle Dietz, a great guy. And what we do is that every dynamic movement has 3 different tempos. So think of 3 different gears in a car. Okay. So the first tempo is the centric muscle action. And the second one is the iso. And the third one is the concentric. We're kind of getting too scientific. So what we do is we keep them in a block training. So they'll work Monday, Wednesday, Friday work schedule. They'll come in and for 2 weeks, what they'll do is they'll do a lot of heavy compound lifts, about 85 to even 90% of their 1 rep max, where they really work on, sounds gross, tearing tissue. And then what happens is after 2 weeks of these movement patterns, that tissue gets thicker, so it could withstand more force. Then 2 weeks after that, we'll move them into what we call an isometric phase, where they just hold the weight on the bottom and then accelerate forward. But they can only do that because 2 weeks prior, remember, they were making that foundation stronger. And then 2 weeks after that, they will do the concentric, which is the quick stuff up and down. And then just before camp, that's where we're at right now, we'll peak a lot of them into what we call French contrast. And what that is kind of like rapid gains in speed and power. So you'll do like a heavy lift, and then you'll do another movement that will mimic that same movement pattern. And then you'll do another lighter load jump, just create some velocity. And then you'll do like what we call a peak velocity movement, where you'll do like an assistant band jump or another jump. So to make a long story short, just so you can see the transition, it makes you kind of resist force and boom, generate power. And that's and the reason why we do this is because the game is all about speed and power right now, right? I have Tyler Kleven too that's in. He's
Nice.
actually experienced it. It was pretty cool because he came in the first workout and he has his Whoop watch and he's like, holy Jesus, intensity is insane. So it was pretty cool to see that and measure some of the stuff. Yeah, so that's kind of what we take them to take them from point A to Z.
I was going to bring up Tyler Kleven. I saw he was made an appearance on your Instagram story. We call him the K-Train. You probably remember Anton Volchenkov back in the day.
Oh yeah. I remember as a beast.
Oh yeah, we're seeing a bit of similarities. I'm sure you've seen some of the hits this kid Kleven has thrown in college. He's a beast, but I'm assuming he just jumped in because we saw him at development camp. He said he was going back to North Dakota for a little while. So how do you work these guys into the training? Whereas for Claude and others, they have the buildup that you mentioned, the 2 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 weeks. Well, a guy like Tyler, who's just coming in now in August, how do you catch him up to speed?
Yeah, that's a great question, because what happened was when he came in, we were in the concentric phase. So we were like kind of 2 weeks before going into what we call the contrast, the French contrast, where they kind of really work on that rapid speed and power. So it was tough because he came into kind of like, in a phase where everything is going super fast, right? So I explained it to him, and he was okay with it because I looked at his program from Michigan University that they gave him, and I mean it's a pretty good program. It's your standard, hockey player off-season program. But I just adjust some of the stuff. After the first round, I'll adjust the weights because a lot of these athletes, no matter what, they know the lingo and they know the patterns. It's just the weight is the key thing because, if you see that their form is not that great or if they've had some previous injuries, obviously you want to, really take care of that red flag and just adjust the weight accordingly. But he adjusted really well. And that just goes to show you what kind of athlete this guy's in. Like his fourth workout, now he's getting it and he's into it. So right now he's in the contrast phase. I said, you're going to be buzzing the next few weeks. And he already feels pretty good on the ice, he told me. So it's just, hopefully next year he can spend a little bit more time with me, which I think he's going to come and spend some time here. I'd love to have him here.
So you've worked with veteran guys like Claude Giroux, and now you're taking on a younger guy in Tyler Kleven. Have you noticed a big difference in athletes from when you were working with Claude at a young age and now you're working with Tyler at a young age? Like, does it seem like young athletes are kind of more in tune with their fitness and nutrition and things like that as opposed to earlier days, or it's kind of similar?
No, it's incredible now I have some young guys as early as, you're not going to believe this, 10 years of age. Okay. And the parents, it's such a competitive, sport. And obviously being a national sport, every parent thinks their kids are going to be in the NHL. And I admire that dream, but it's so crucial now because kids are just so much faster. There's better data. There's better exercise. Like I've changed my whole training. Like I don't train the way I used to train, 6 years ago, because the game is so much quicker. I mean, I was doing a lot of periodization training back in the day. It was okay. It was good. But now I don't do anything that I haven't tested or measured. I don't teach it because I always ask, someone, well, look, like they're like, well, my coach had me do lunges. I'm like, well, what was the purpose? What are you working on? They're like, strength. I'm like, well, did they test it? Like, how did they measure that? And I'm like, I don't know. They just said I was getting stronger. Well, I said, well, if you're not testing, then you're just guessing, right? So I've changed so much that these kids that are coming in right now, like they have way more knowledge, they have way more drive, and they know that they need to do this stuff to be at that level. Like some of these agents are giving me names of people at age 14 that they're looking at. I'm like, 14? Like it's crazy. So, I mean, it's a competitive world. And I think if you don't stay on top, especially with these kids coming in to train, then it's going to be very, very tough. So, the kids these days have really expanded their horizons in their training. To answer that question. And same with the parents. The parents have done a lot of research themselves. I think a lot of them know what they need and what they wanted, and they get the feedback. Oh, I spoke to the coach. He needs to get his first step quicker. Oh, he's got to get stronger. Oh, he's got to be bigger. He's got to get more flexible. Like, they get these comments now because everybody's in the game, right? A lot more than they used to be.
Yeah, this has been a really informative chat, Tony, and you've inspired me. Maybe I'll actually use the home gym that I have. I haven't stepped foot in there since moving into my new place, so maybe I'll actually give that a try. But last question for me here, Tony, is what's one kind of simple fitness or nutritional tip you can leave us with here to end this off?
Well, I think, you know what, everybody's got different goals, and fitness, like I said, is a lifestyle. Don't expect to get results in 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks. It's a journey. It's a process. You have to trust it, and you got to believe in it. And it doesn't, listen, I'm far from perfect, and believe me, I don't eat great myself. I indulge so much you couldn't believe it. But you do the crime, you do the time, right? And the time is, you have to put in the work physically. Fitness is like the new medicine. Whatever it is that you do, apply some physical fitness in your life, whether you're walking, whether you're sweet, whatever it is, just apply it in your own life with some good, healthy eating habits, and you're going to see the progress, which is going to create a lot of interest. You'll feel better.
I love that. Feeling better is the key for sure. Now, I'll feel better if the Sens win a few games off the bat. So tell me, Claude, tell me, Tyler, looking good going into next season. You expecting another monster season from Claude?
I'm expecting a better season last year. Like, I'm not that he's a client, but I don't know what it is. Even this year, I'm like, I even told him, I said, what are you eating? What are you doing? Because he's training like he's like 20 years old. Like, this kid is finishing first every time. And I mean, people listen to this podcast that work out in his group, guys like Benny Hunt and Ty Felleber, and Tyler will tell you that. Like, this guy is, I mean, I'm so proud of him, because at his age to be doing what he's doing and how fast he's doing it, incredible. I told him he will definitely have a better year. Like, if he plays the way he's working out, I don't know what can stop him.
And he's so much fun to watch too, because you can tell he thinks the game at such an elite level. He's always thinking 2 steps ahead. Has a lot of Daniel Alfredson in him, is what I kept saying during the show last year. Like, how often during the season? I know in the off season he's in there 3 times a week, but are you able to keep track of him during the season, or you just kind of let the Sens strength team do their thing?
Yeah, I talked to him. I mean, Rob obviously does an amazing job over there, and I mean, I don't really dab into that because I know their schedule is so hectic and stuff. He's got a lot of stuff that we've done before, like the French contrast stuff, if there's ever days off or time that he could sneak in something in his gym there. But, I mean, the Sens organization does such a great staff, and Rob, and, I communicate with him, and it's just a matter of getting these players to the next level. They do an amazing job. You can see the condition of the team. So I leave that up to them during the season.
Well, man, it's been a pleasure to get to chat with you. It's been a long time coming, and we love following you on Instagram at Tony TG, and you can go check out his website, tgathletics.com. The gym looks awesome, by the way. Such a kind of a mix between like a cottage where you want to just, relax. You got a bit of the wood in there, but then when I see the weights, that changes everything into a fitness mindset. So keep up the great work, man. It's a pleasure getting to chat with you, and let's do this again down the road as well.
Okay, my pleasure. Thanks for having me, and you guys continue great success.
All right, Pilsy. Great conversation with Tony. And as I mentioned, make sure you're following Tony on his social media and go check out tgathletics.com. That was inspirational. I'm ready to go lift. But before that, Pilsy, why don't you let people know what's coming up the rest of the week on Locked On Senators?
Yeah, we got a great week coming up. A Sens Central Citizen on Wednesday, as we always do. But we love racking up the air miles for our Sens Central Citizen. We're going back down under, back to Australia.
4th time, I believe.
Yeah, I think it is the 4th time.
Lincoln Berry,
Ash
Rogers, and Jimmy High. We know you, Jimmy. You're right there. So now we're gonna have Madden on. Absolute beauty, big time chef. And he joined us at 1:00 in the morning to record this. So we just got off with him. We're going to put that out tomorrow. Really fun conversation. And now we've had a British accent and an Australian accent and back-to-back citizens.
Yeah, we're going to have to get a South African accent on here eventually.
German.
Yeah, yes, definitely. We need to get back to our German audience.
If you're German and are listening right now, let us know in the comments and you can be a Sens Central citizen. Pilsy, what do we got Friday as well?
Absolutely. And then speaking of heading back to Europe, a Danish goaltender.
Wonder who?
Who could it be?
Could it be Freddie Anderson?
Freddie Lalime?
Huh?
No, we're gonna have our good friend Mad Sogard back on the show. It's been too long since we talked to him, especially after he got a massive taste of NHL experience last season.
Guys played 20 NHL games since we last chatted with him.
Yeah, exactly. And it was awesome to hear about Mando's experience. So now we're going to get to hear about Mad's experience as well. Can't wait for that.
I want to hear about Mad's experience watching Mando too, because that was when he'd only played one game, right? It was early
and
on.
He was the vet.
Yeah, he's the vet. Hey, how'd you calm down your friend? Hey, you got that's so awesome. Yeah, we're really looking forward to our conversation with Mads coming up, whether Friday or maybe next week, but likely Friday. Just got to work out because he is going to be making the trip back to Ottawa sooner than later. Just a little note at the end of the show. I wouldn't expect Igor to be signing until September, but hopefully that gets underway sooner rather than later. Need to get Igor signed because now we're getting all these Sensplex photos. Everybody's out there. Igor looks great. He's flying. Everyone who's DMing us is like, hey, man, I was just at the skate. Igor is flying. So I think
he's got something to prove.
He's going to come in and bang the door down. This guy's engaged, getting married next summer. He's got a family to take care of right here in Ontario, and he knows the opportunity can be there in the nation's capital. So we're looking forward to all that throughout the next number of weeks. And this gets me so fired up because this is the time of year where you get all of these countdowns. And our good friend Sens Chirp, the OG of the Sens blogosphere, he posted this, Pillsy. I just want you to read it off because it's going to get me so excited. I don't know if I can get through it quick enough without, really, really stuttering. So why don't you let people know what's coming up for the Senators?
And lucky Sens Chirp did this because we are not math guys, especially when it comes to days. So rookie opener versus New Jersey, 24 days away. Start of training camp, 30 days away. Preseason opener versus Toronto, 33 days away. The preseason finale versus Montreal, 46 days away. And the regular season opener versus Carolina, 50 days away. And here it is, the home opener, which so many of us, including Ross, myself, and Lalime's Marshall will be at, versus Philadelphia, 53 days away. Let's go.
I can't wait to hear that. It's home opener, just the dun, 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 dun. The boys are getting ready to come out. Hopefully they put on a show like they did last home opener. I mean, my goodness, what a start. Claude Giroux, of all people, scoring on his first shift at home in Ottawa. Storybook stuff. Artem Zub, that goal, everything was phenomenal. Still the best Tuesday of your life?
Still the best Tuesday of my life, yes.
Awesome. Any final thoughts on today's show?
Yes, final thoughts for me is stick taps to Jacob Chikrin. He is partnering with Hard Rock, and he's going to be doing a lot of different things to promote awareness for mental health programs in the Ottawa area. He's going to be doing dinners, golf events, kind of meet and greet stuff. He donated $10,000 already up front, and it's a great story. And look, he's only just arrived in Ottawa, but as he mentioned in Bruce Garriock's article, Ottawa just feels like home for him. He has so much family here. He spent Christmases up here. He's always come back from living in Florida to spend time with family in Ottawa. So this is a community he wants to help and support. And especially these days with young people, mental health is a battle every day. And the more help, the more awareness, the more kind of involvement we can get from people like Jacob Chikrin is as good as it gets. So stick taps to Chikrin on that one.
Very happy you brought that up. And the $10,000, the check he presented was for the Alzheimer's Society as well. So another very, very important initiative and one that's close to his heart. So I'm glad you brought that up. Pilsy, we will discuss that further as it becomes more and more consistent when the season starts, but a very good start. And Chikrin posting on his social media as well with that great article that Bruce Garriock put. Only 25 years old, man. Great to see this guy. It just feels like he's going to be a Senator for a long time. He's got 2 years left on his contract. Hopefully he can keep that going. My final thoughts, the Senators, again, they keep posting on their social media. Guys are back skating. For any of you gear nerds out there, Thomas Chabot has gone full Bauer, whereas Tim Stützle ended last season with CCM, and now he's a full CCM guy. He'd been rocking a bit of Bauer before. So Thomas Chabot, man, I think a new look, new evolution of Thomas Chabot I'm hoping we see next season. So all that is just adding to the excitement as we discuss. We're 20-some days away from Senators jerseys flying around on the ice. Yes, it's the rookies, but still, we're that much closer to Senators training camp. For today, we say goodbye. A reminder, you can follow us on social media, Send Central on Twitter, LockedOn.Senators on Instagram. Vote for the Ring of Honor, episode 4. We'll have another great one next week that's actually decided on by tomorrow's Send Central citizen. So stay tuned for all that. For today, we say goodbye. For Brandon Piller, I'm Ross Levitan. This has been the Locked On Senators podcast, your team every day.